This podcast is a part of the More Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Leader Podcast by Pattern Talent, where we interview great leaders and we seek to understand leadership. I'm Brad McDonald.
And I'm Taylor Jessup, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode.
All right, Brad, we're back, and this is your favorite, The Lounge.
The Lounge.
Yeah, I think this is the second of the last three episodes where actually all of your technology worked today for the first time.
Yep. And you know what? All I did was plug this mic in, and voila.
And you're good. But all the other times it hasn't been that way.
Nope.
Okay. All right. Hey, that's cool. Well, cool. So lounge episode. I don't know what lounge episode this is, but we're going to do what we always do, which is review our podcast with our incredible guests that have come on. Got a few today.
Yeah, we've got some good ones today. I'm stoked to get to reminisce a little on these.
Yes. We got Josh Kalsbeek, Jessica Pearson, and Brad Larson that we're going to talk about. So
That's
if
right.
you haven't watched those episodes, either go watch them or the shorts, but you don't have to because we're going to give you some of our hot topics, that we're going to talk about. Yeah, that's right. Also, I just want to rip out my Girl Dad shirt for a minute. You see this?
I like that.
So for you who are just listening, all you Spotify or iHeartRadio people, I'm a guy at work. He gave me a Girl Dad shirt. That's what I'm wearing, man.
What a kind colleague. Hey, speaking of work, tell me about your Hubba Tubba Bubba Big Bertha back there.
Dude, Hubba Tubba Bubba. All right, so for those of you who can see, I'm going to just turn my camera a little bit. That there we go. Is Big Bertha. And Big Bertha makes a lot of big candles, big and small. Hang on, just quick plug here. So we've got like this one in my hand here, Cozy Cabin, which is a fantastic scent. Can open it up. Yeah, Ellery May, tiny fires in your home that smell like heaven. Oh gosh, that's fantastic. So she is launching back up. If you don't follow her, she's one of our biggest sponsors on the show. Go check her out on Instagram. She posts all of her stories. Oh, look at that. You've got a candle yourself. Brad and I are both holding up Ellery May candles.
I got a little apricot jasmine over here. Big fan.
That is a good one. It's great.
You know what? I wonder if I have a lighter in my office.
Brad, we have a podcast to record, man. Where'd you go?
This is a first light of an Ellery May. This is a product demonstration as what this has become.
I guess we've never done that before on the show.
I'm pretty sure Janelle is not paying us enough to do demos live on the pod.
Sure. Yeah, it is very expensive for us. So if you want us to demo your product on the show, what do we start at, Brad? We start at about $1,000.
I would say it's $1,000 a show.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're like, man, that would be awesome because these guys have so many followers, and are such good salespeople. Which, by the way, Founders Podcast, if you ever listen to that one, I just listened to one on Steve Jobs being the best salesman of all time. I thought it was fantastic. Made some really good points. I'm not going to give it all away. It is Founders episode. Here, I've got it right here.
I don't think you're supposed to promote other podcasts on your podcast. I think that's like a big no.
They don't have to know. Founders episode number 350, How to Sell Like Steve Jobs. Check that out. If you don't listen to these guys, they're pretty good. Look at that. Maybe that's not as cool as our logo, though. I think ours is better. On the Daily Leader.
Thank you, Thursdays & Co. for our logo.
Yeah, Thursdays & Co. Another shout out. So speaking of some cool things that we have going on, Brad, you and I have a couple things coming down the pipe. Is it pipe or pike?
It's pike. Yeah.
I never really known, so I think I go back and forth. That's embarrassing.
Well, we're not from the Northeast, so pike is not something that we really do.
No, yeah, that's okay. It makes me feel better because, like, my brother-in-law, we give him a hard time because he says, what does he say? Read it and wheat.
Definitely not how that saying goes.
And I think, what do they all say? On that side of the fam, they all say ibuprofen, I think, instead of ibuprofen.
Wow.
Yeah, different. So coming down the pike, we got a couple things. So Brad, you and I are starting a group coaching group.
That's right.
Coaching group, which is going to be awesome. If you want to exponentially grow yourself, your business, your team, your bottom line, this would be a fantastic time for you to jump in. It will be a 6-month course you're going to go through with us. We'll meet a couple times a month. You get accountability. You get a whole bunch of people that you're doing it with. You never know what kind of relationships you might build, and definitely get some good coaching that will help you get your business to where you want to be. So we actually haven't named it yet, and we were trying. We attempted to have ChatGPT help us.
Share ChatGPT suggestion with our audience here.
I will. ChatGPT really let us down. So we had like Empowered Squad, Success Saviors. I kind of like that one. Growth Gurus, Dream Drivers, Progress Pioneers, Goal Getters, Transformation Tribe, Achievement Alliance, Victory Voyagers, Momentum Masters. And then that made me laugh because they were so terrible. So I asked ChatGPT to keep going, but actually make them even cheesier, which we got Empowerment Extraordinaries, Success Superstars, Growth Gurus Galore. That's hard to say. Growth Gurus Galore, G3. We just call it G3. Nobody would have to know the name. Dream Team Dynamos, Progress Powerhouse, Goal Getter Gladiators, Transformation Titans, Achievement Avengers, Victory Vanguards, and Momentum Magicians. As you can tell, that was a smashing success.
ChatGPT is fired.
Yeah. So, but who is hired is our listeners, because we'd love to know if you were going to name a group that was going to bring you some exponential success in your own life, in your own health, on your own team, business, company. Bottom line, what would you name it? So, as we're building this, we want to take our listeners into account. So that's number one. If you haven't signed up yet, there is limited size. So contact us, email us, go to our website. You can do all that kind of stuff. Get signed up. Number two, Brad, we are starting a group called what?
Imposters Anonymous.
Heck yeah, we are. Heck yeah. Yeah, if you're like, well, that doesn't sound like it's for me, then that's fine. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be your group. But the premise is this, is that we all struggle, I think, from time to time, all of us, no matter who you are. You can be the top CEO at your company. You can be, day one, new job out of college, at feeling A, potentially like we belong sometimes, B, that maybe we don't know what the heck we're doing. And maybe even to the point where sometimes you feel like, hey, maybe I'm going to be exposed for this. Everybody's going to find out. It may not be that severe. But the group is meant to connect with other people who are in business. So other entrepreneurs, other people running nonprofits, organizations, just a whole bunch of people from all around the country. We're going to get together, short 30 minutes every Thursday, last Thursday of the month, excuse me. And people break into some small groups in that time, and you just get 3 minutes to share what's going on in your business, whether that's exciting or not. You can pass, you don't have to share. So come check it out if that sounds like it'd be super helpful for you. And you never know who you might meet. You might meet somebody from across the country that, man, they're doing tech and you're doing tech, and you guys start a project together. That would be my hope and dream, is like connecting people and just letting them know they're not alone in whatever they're going through. So did I miss anything on all that, Brad?
You didn't, man. We've already got a handful of people joining us, signed up already. And I haven't even sent out my invitations yet. So I'm going to do that as soon as we hang up.
Yeah.
I'm going to get my invitations out, and we're going to go from there.
I think that group at the moment, that group is capped at 100. So we're getting closer to that number. I don't know how close we'll get, but if you're interested, contact us, DM us on Instagram, send us a comment in YouTube's.
Or just come over, just pop by the house.
Yeah, just swing by Shane's house, to be honest, 123 Main Street, Phoenix, 85050. Okay, so that's a lot on us. I'm done talking about us.
I want to talk about Josh Kalsbeek, man, and our interview with him. Josh Kalsbeek, psychotherapist, founder of Wisecraft. So if you're into podcasts, he's got a fantastic blog and podcast called Wisecraft. Great Oaks Collective, that's his kind of intensive program, right, Taylor?
Yep, intensive outpatient. You can find
anything and everything, Josh Kalsbeek at joshkalsbeek.com. He's a good friend of ours. And I really liked how he placed leadership in the context of wisdom. I thought that was awesome. And I'm curious, Taylor, do you remember Josh's definition of wisdom?
Let's see. I think I do. Geez, I am falling short at the moment, Brad. You're gonna have to help me out. What did he say?
It deals with the word virtue.
Yes, it is. Man, I had it written down too.
You ready for me to give it to you?
Yeah,
Ready?
just give it to me.
Virtuous skill in living. Virtuous skill in living.
Yeah, that's what I said. Virtuous skill in living.
Yep. Actually, you told me the definition, and then I wrote it down, and then you forgot it. So
which is
there
good.
we have it.
And now we're live anyways, and now I didn't have it. Virtuous skill in living. Yeah. What does that mean to you?
It means that there's a qualitatively good set of activities that we do. Wisdom is about qualitatively good. We're oriented towards things that are good, that are healthy, that are right for us, and that it's not just something that we think, but it's actually practice. Right? It's something that we engage in as an activity. And so when leadership is in that context, then, it can come from this place of human flourishing, right? It can lead to more human flourishing. And it's not just about profitability, growth, metrics, measures.
Yeah.
Those things may be there, and those things may be an important component of our leadership. But there's really this virtuous skill in living that's coming through. And I think that that's a great take on what it means to lead.
Man, it is super good. And Josh has an email that I subscribe to as well called Words of Wisdom. And I like the idea that you can grow in your wisdom and virtue. Like it's not fixed, right? So like you said, this is a set of practices and principles that are good for living that we can increase and grow our strength in. And Josh has always been big in like growing in wisdom, which I think is a super interesting thing because I think my perception in the past of wisdom is like, man, King Solomon is wise, or the old dude, that's lived a lot of life is wise, but not thinking about necessarily how do I myself grow in wisdom? How do I develop that? One of the things that he mentioned on the pod that I thought was cool is hey, we all need a hero or somebody to look up to help us get there, right? And I think if you go back, um, historically, that's the way that we used to roll as humans, right? Like you would get that from somebody. Like if you were Jewish, right, you'd have a rabbi that you're following around. You would get that from somebody that was somebody that's older that you can look up to, and that would pour their wisdom and their life into you. And I feel like our culture's kind of gone away from that. We're pretty individualistic, which there's some really good things about that. Because I want everybody to be their best self. That's one of my favorite things to do in leadership is going, hey, how do I access the best part of who Brad is? But I think Josh made a really good point. Like, hey, we need not just a hero that's like, hey, I got Simon Sinek. I'm like, that's great, but is Simon Sinek doing life with you? So I mean, I don't know. What do you think? The story I make up, this is just what I make up, is that most people probably don't have that person. Do you think that's true? Or do you think most people do and they don't leverage them?
Yeah, I think that most people have people that they look up to in one way or another, but it's by default, not by decision, so to speak. And what I see great leaders doing is being very intentional about the type of person that they want to become and finding the models that they need to go pursue. And you and I were talking about this just today with both of the two individuals who do executive coaching for us and help us grow, right? We see things in them that we're like, man, Corey, Adrian, they do things really, really well. And we want to model some things that we see them doing in their businesses as well as just in their lives. And yet at the same time, we also recognize, well, we're going to have to tailor those types of things for our own unique relationships, experiences, set of circumstances. And then our ability to take what we've intentionally, followed as a model and apply those principles is where the kind of the magic of those relationships is. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing. We are very fortunate to have been taught and trained to go find those kinds of relationships. A lot of people don't have that in their life. And so I think, if anything, hopefully the daily leader becomes a little bit of a surrogate for people who might find themselves lacking a coach, a mentor, a mother or father figure, a great boss, let's say, and we can help kind of fill some of that void.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. We will not be in replacement of that, right? But we can, hopefully some of the wisdom that's on the show can fill in the gaps as you're finding that person. And intentionality is a great differentiator in that. I think if we go all the way back to Elizabeth Dixon, I think she was the one that talked about, hey, you never know what asking that person out for a cup of coffee might do. Because I'll reframe what I said. I think most of us probably, if we think hard enough about it, might have that person in our life that we're like, man, I want to glean some wisdom and knowledge from them. But the difference that you talked about is, do we have the intentionality to go to that person and to share that and to say that and to be intentional? Go, hey, okay, I like the way you do life. Can you walk with me through mine and help me become a little bit more like you? That would be a fantastic thing.
And so here's what's really interesting, Taylor. One of the other things that Josh said about this was that the lack of a hero is really what derails and causes so many high capacity performers to end up being dysfunctional. So when we don't have those heroes, when we don't have those models, we end up falling prey to what he referred to as strongholds. And those strongholds ultimately take us off course from that future self that we long to become, or a particular vision that we're pursuing. So tell me anything, and I'm trying not to fail this time.
Okay, thank you.
Some of those strongholds that you remember, and how those have had, and you've been sitting on these for a while. You and I both have been, this content is something that we've, in multiple areas of life, used as a lens.
Oh yeah.
So this is not new content for us, but it's a great reminder for the listener of, these are the things that derail us. They prevent us from becoming the future self we long to be and achieving the vision we pursue.
Yeah, and these things, a lot of times they come from a spot that I can relate to all of these in one level or another, right? Like I either still battle or have battled, from time to time, all of these. So I think those five were, right: dishonesty, fear, resentment, distorted thinking, and selfishness. Which selfishness, I don't think I've ever really been a selfish person, if I was to be really honest. That's just not me. Hopefully our listeners are picking up on the sarcasm.
Well, actually, it's funny that you frame it this way, because I would say we all have strongholds that we are more predisposed to cling to, or to, I would even say, use as a coping mechanism. And sometimes, like, there are people, like, genuinely, who, like, fear. There's not a lot of fear in there. That's not their primary stronghold, right? But maybe for them, selfishness is one. And so I would tell you, like, you're definitely very selfish, but you might be even more fearful than you are selfish.
And that's true. If I was to talk about which one of those do I give into more, probably distorted thinking and fear would probably be my top two that I struggle with, right? So these are the root causes, the distortion, like my distorted thinking, not perceiving reality as it actually is, but telling a story in my head, that whatever that narrative is, and fear of what could happen with my future. It's anxiety, something that I've wrestled with in my life. Those two, are, two things that can lead to me getting derailed really fast, right? And when we do that, our tendency is to try and now cope to avoid those feelings. And we see this all the time where, leaders, and this is part of my story too, end up making some choices that they didn't want to make, right? High capacity people, fantastic, doing great. But that high capacity also means, hey, I got to rest. If I'm not resting and taking care of myself, I can give into the distorted thinking, the fear, and then I got to try and escape that. And if I escape that in an immoral way that it doesn't line up with me, you can get caught into addiction and a lot of those things. So,
man, you know what you're reminding me of? You're reminding me of being in college and writing a paper. And let me just ask you, if you've never been distracted on Adderall, like, if you've never gone down a rabbit hole on Adderall, you've never really done it. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
Because when you're on Adderall, and I know some of you listeners are on Adderall, and I know some of you are taking more than you're prescribed. Okay. And you need to think twice about doing that next time. But
they're doing three things at the same time and more productive
right,
than you've ever been in your entire life as you're
right.
critiquing them.
But this is the deal, right? It's just like this, right? In real life. Like, man, when you get, you're high performing, but when you get going down the wrong direction, you get going down that wrong direction aggressively, right?
Yeah.
Intensely, right? Passionately in the wrong direction. And for me, what I related to and shared this in the episode with Josh was that idea of resentment and anger, right? And I call it stewing, right? So like, man, if I get focused on some of the things, some of the hurt and the hangups in my life, and I start to think and play that victim card and get into some resentment, man, I can lose half a day to a bad attitude, being disgruntled, frustration that's misplaced, and that idea of like toxic ongoing anger and judgment that refuses forgiveness is something that completely derails teams from the kind of health and thriving that they have the potential to achieve. And it starts with us as leaders catching ourselves in these strongholds and saying, okay, how do I find a better way? How do I find a virtuous way to cope with reality instead of falling prey to these things?
Yeah, totally. As you were telling that story, it reminded me of this sermon by Stephen Furtick, and it was on chains. And I was laughing because he's talking about, different things that we perceive, I think in the Christian world too, is like worse than others, right? So he's talking about breaking those chains, pornography, alcoholism, all those kind of things. And he says something, and this is out of context, but it's pretty clear. He's like, man, he's like, some of y'all in this church, you gossip so bad, it would be better if you drank, because the damage that you do with the bottle or with your lips is way more than they do with the bottle. But I think the point that like, hey, that comes from that place typically of like resentment, anger, toxic, like those kind of thoughts. And we don't often, what's the best way to say this? Like you said, you're kind of just chucking along, and then all of a sudden, if you're not really careful, if you're not working on your life, if you don't have somebody that's kind of helping you understand those things, nobody means to end up in the ditch where they're like, hey, I've been given into my toxic thoughts so much that I wasted half a day on just my anger. Hey, I've been given into my dishonesty so much I started lying to my spouse about how much I'm drinking. Like, nobody means to be there, but all of a sudden we just end up there. And so if we are not having that person who's our hero, having other people to challenge and encourage us, there's a good chance that we might end up giving into any or all of those and end up someplace that we don't want to be. Which I know you and we've seen that a lot. And, there's always, the ability to come through on the other side and be a stronger, better person. But if we can help people avoid that pain, certainly want to. So, man, it's a powerful episode. If you're interested more, go back, listen to Josh. Cause I do think he made some really, really good thoughts on healthy ways of living, on how to battle those, on wisdom, on all those things. So Jessica Pearson, next one, she did a fantastic job. She was super.
Her
good.
Story, wow! Can you recap her story a little bit for the listener?
Yeah,
I think
I'll do my best here. I'm going to try and not swing and miss like I did at the beginning of our episode here. But Jessica,
well, let me start it this way. All right, just to remind you, she was happily employed and working and crushing it in Motorola.
Yeah. Was it Motorola or IBM?
I think it was Motorola here locally.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, Jessica was super happily employed. She was crushing it, doing super well, and ended up losing her job. And in Jessica's story, I just found it so fascinating. She just kind of felt this call, which I think this is what really spoke to me. She felt this call to kind of help people find jobs in a time that was very hard to find jobs, and didn't necessarily have the, I don't know, means or resources to do that. Like, she didn't have tons of money to throw at it, but she had herself, her experience, all those things, and a passion to go after it. And so she started volunteering and just kind of doing that, I think, at her local church, helping people find jobs, and literally gets a phone call after she's been doing it for some time. I think from one of the pastors at the church going, hey, you got to get over here, which would be a strange call to get at that point. And she got there, and I think there was like 300 people. There was like a line out the door of the church.
And wasn't there a news crew?
Yeah, there was like a news crew there to talk about what she was doing, helping people find jobs, like working on their resumes with them, like the whole process, which has turned into her current business, which she's still doing today. Like
Yep. Career
her,
Connectors, careerconnectors.org. Go check it out. They're helping people get jobs all over the nation.
yeah, yeah. But that story, like wherever you are, was literally a something that she was passionate about that turned into full-time work and kind of out of a train wreck of a situation, right? Like not out of a, hey, I had my job, everything was all good. It was like, no, things are kind of starting to fall apart. And she didn't even start doing it for money, like she set out to fill a need. That's all she set out to do.
Yeah, she told her husband at one point, "Hey, like I've got to go volunteer." And meanwhile, they're both like, he's like, "Wait a second, we're supposed to be looking for jobs. Like we just lost our jobs. We just lost our home. Like what do you mean? We're not volunteering." But that was what she had this kind of sense that she had to do, and look at what became of her following that warm-hearted impulse to help and serve others.
Totally, totally. And that was going back to that, founders episode. He was talking about, hey, one of the greatest things that Apple does is they find out what their people actually needed or wanted and then try and solve that issue for them, which is literally what Jessica did, and in that passion of, hey, people need somebody to help them figure out their resumes, right? And position themselves well. That passion to help those people and solve a really basic need ended up turning into Career Connectors, which is still going today, which is an incredible story. So
That's right.
I think she did a great job talking about that. Man, she also did a great job talking about kind of employee engagement. We talked about, there's a great short that we've got of Jessica. You did pretty well even on YouTube, of her talking about like, man, we can throw ping pong tables and have the coolest kind of experience for our employees, and yet kind of miss the boat on actually connecting with them and having them connect with our mission and our values because we don't understand them. So I think she said, what we engage with our employees through spending time listening and understanding their actual needs, like actually spending time with them. So man, I don't know what was really impactful for you about that and the work that you do.
So I think it resonates very well with my experience, like as a practitioner, as a manager, recognizing that the employees that really feel most connected to the purpose and to the work that they're doing are ones who have strong relationships with their coworkers, right? And they have a sense that like we're doing something together that matters to you and to me and to our families and how we provide, as well as to the constituents we're serving. So I think that connectedness comes as a result of close relationships, and that those close relationships come as a result of managers intentionally investing time, asking good questions, actually listening to what people are saying. And this goes back to Corey Shear too, with closing the trust gap. Like you want to build trust with people, listen to what they say they need, and go fulfill those needs. And I felt like basically Jessica boiled down employee engagement to that principle. What do your employees need? Go fulfill those needs in order to support them and serve them and value them and kind of get out of their way so they can perform.
Yeah. No, I like that. And Jessica seems to be a walking, living, breathing model of that. Like that's what she, when she was with us, you could tell that she actually cared for us. It was Darren Hardy on the Every Hero's Journey leadership training that I did years ago, that he said, hey, if you don't know your team's hopes, dreams, goals, and fears, you're not leading them, which I think is a scary thought, because the story that I make up is, or the question that I have is, how many of our leaders of our companies and teams know their team's hopes, dreams, goals, and fears? I think we often know what the expectations are, the KPIs, and what we want to see as the results. But I think we don't necessarily always know, hey, what are your dreams? What are your hopes? What are your aspirations? What are you afraid of? But the challenging part is like we in order to get to motivation for those people, the motivation doesn't necessarily just lie in the KPI, right? It doesn't always lie. Like you can say, hey, you're going to get this bonus, which is fantastic. It's great. And sometimes that's a good enough motivator, right? But I think if we're talking not just, but money can be made more so elsewhere. So somebody who's only motivated by money will always leave when they get more money. If you understand what really motivates that person, oh man, there's a good time. I think there's a better chance of having better ROI with them and better retention in the long run.
Brandon Schaefer told the story of a client and his right-hand man on a 10-hour drive, and how that was the impetus of the relationship becoming what it became, and the business ultimately a turning point for the business to grow into what it grew to. And he used the term, we have to be comfortable with wasting time together. And it doesn't feel good to say that to kind of like the continuous improvement, you know, type operator that we all think that we're supposed to be, you know. However, it is probably one of the greatest secrets of strong, healthy cultures is that there's a tension on, not only do we deliver our products and service, but we also develop relationships, and we take the time, waste the time, if you will, to do that together.
Yeah.
So
And
I
I know
thought she did a great job kind of tying in some principles from other pods as well.
she did. Yeah, she did. And I know we lean, like you and I have talked about this, we lean people heavy, right? And I'm sure that there's
Yeah,
some, we can get
zip
on
ties.
YouTube to see all of our people that would be like, hey,
Oh
a
man,
job is just a job, and we just get chewed out, which is fantastic. But I think our hope is
dude.
bigger than a job
Basically,
is just a job.
if you're a YouTube commenter, you are uh, complaining about the fact that you have no relationships at work, but also you kind of don't care because the only reason that you want to be there is because you want money. And it's just like,
I mean, yeah,
there's
it's kind of a
you can't win
it's
for losing. It's a bot.
it's it's all of our bots that just hate us. No, I mean, I can buy some of what they're selling, but I also subscribe to more of the Simon Sinek, infinite game. Hey, let's think longer than just the bottom line here. Let's think about people. Let's think about, as we just talked about recently, on our podcast of, okay, well, what is this going to benefit the next generation? How is this person going to develop somebody else? Like, I actually, and I really do believe that if you continue to put people before profits, your profits will take care of themselves. If you do that, if you put people before profits, your profits will take care of themselves. It doesn't mean you can't execute, because you can't just go, well, I'm really nice to people. Like we've talked about this a lot. But if you can do that in your business, because you will have a loyal following of people that are actually committed to you. They're committed to
You
you.
know
They're
what I
committed to
think?
your business, to your vision. So
For me, and the way that I do business consulting and planning, profits are the fifth thing that I address. They're the fifth thing on my list. There are four other things that come before profitability that if you don't have dialed in, your profitability is going to be just a fraction of what it could be. And so I'm fully on board with that. But I think it is important to call out our bias, and it can be difficult for people who come from a different background, who are maybe very highly results oriented, to hear what we're saying and to buy into it. And I don't know, we'll do an episode on the five capitals where we talk about why profits last, and why when profits last, you actually make more of it than you do when you put it first.
right, correct. And you and I got into a debate recently about this as well, somewhat of like, does your job need to be your passion? Does it need to be the and my answer was no, it doesn't. Your passion could lie outside of your work.
Your premise was that your job needs to be optimized towards your values, and that not everyone values having a bunch of meaning in their work. They might want a job that gives them more meaning in family time or personal time or some other capacity. Maybe they're in a season where they've got really high financial need, or low financial need, and they want more work-life balance or something. And so jobs are a way to optimize towards values, which I think is good. I know I made fun of you and told you were wrong in that
You
moment, but
did.
the more I
You did.
reflected, the more I realized you're
Well,
not completely wrong.
often in our relationship, you come back around and you realize that just that, Brad, that I'm not completely wrong. I may not be completely right either. So it doesn't have to define you. It's not like that needs to be your, shining moment thing, deal, whatever you want to call it. But I think it is important as someone who is managing and thinking about how do I get the most out of my team? How do I get the most out of them is to go, okay, the best way to do that is help them actually grow as an individual. If they are growing as an individual and have that character, and I help them grow in character and wisdom, as we talked about, and all those kind of things, then yeah, my bottom line, I think we'll see that result. Um, so yeah, I mean, both those episodes were great, and last one today is Mr. Larson, who very well there. What did you love about Mr. Larson? What's your hot topic for
Yeah,
Mr. Larson?
that was a lot of fun. That was actually one of our longer podcasts. We really had a lot to talk about, and Brad had a lot to say. And I took his overarching message as leadership requires a whole integrated person in order to be sustained over a lifetime. So if you're leading from a place of um, kind of lacking character, lacking integrity, lacking wholeness, you're going to be very limited in your capacity to do good, and to be great. And so I felt like he kind of unpacked the philosophy around that for us, which was really great. I love how he tied in physical health, things like breathing, exercise, meditation into these kind of practical leadership principles, because a lot of times we think leadership is kind of this thing of the head, but it's actually this whole integrated person that's leading, not just a decision maker. So I thought that was great. What about you?
Yeah, no, I love that. I think, yeah, I kind of took away some of the same things. I'll say to the level and extent to which we are fully a whole person will be the level and extent to which we can fully be the best leader we can be. Our capacity to be a great leader, in other words, is hindered by how healthy we actually are. And I think we do forget that. I think this is what we're talking about. It's like you if you are not living as a truly healthy person, you can't just assume that, okay, but I'm also going to be a fantastic leader. Those two things don't exist, right? So, if you're a Bible person, it would say, hey, scripture says, out of the overflow of a man's heart does his mouth speak. In other words, whatever I put in ends up coming out. And so the healthier we get, the healthier our leadership gets, which I thought was an awesome point. And I think that that's great, because I've defined it as the leaders are the bottleneck of a company. In other words, a team can never transcend its leader. So if I want my team to grow, the best thing for me to do is get as healthy and grow as much as I can, because I am the bottleneck that holds my team to wherever they're going to go. So if I'm not healthy, then that's as high as that team can go. The healthier I get and the more I challenge and push myself to be, get out of my comfort zone and to grow and to think, the more my team can actually do that and the more I can engage with them in a healthy way. And Brad did do a good job of talking about what does that look like holistically. I know he kind of talked about leadership. There's a great short on that. He said leadership is, and this kind of coincides a little bit with how you've defined it too, but is impact and influence. And he said, man, hey, some of those best leaders are like really seeing people. So I see people not just as a number or as a person on my team, but I see the person wanting something for them. So again, going back, what do they hope for, dream for, long for? What are those? And then figuring out how do I help them unlock that. That was kind of the way that he talked about leadership, and I love that idea, man. I wonder what it would be like if more companies sat down with their employees and said, hey, okay, where do you want to get to in 10 years? And here's what I want to do. I want to take the pressure of you staying at this company out of it. But I want to know where you want to go in 10 years. I want to know where you want to be in 15 years. I want to know where you want to be in 20 years. Like, tell me your hopes, dreams, visions, and goals. And then how do I help you get there? right? The story that I make up about that is, man, radical impact. You'd be surprised maybe how long those people would stay. You'd be surprised the kind of production they got when you actually care about the person enough to go, hey, how do I help you get to where you want to go in your life, in your relationships, and all those kind of things. And maybe they don't want to talk about home relationships. Maybe they only want to talk about work, but that's fantastic. Help them figure out where they want to go. That's what leaders do. I don't know, Brad. What else are we missing about that episode? It was such a jam-packed episode of just really solid nuggets, if you will. There were plenty of hot topics throughout that episode.
Yeah, overall, it was really good. It was really good. Powerful question, you know. Do you want to appear as though you're well, or do you actually want to be well? And I have thought about that many times since we had that conversation with him. There was another podcast interview where someone asked a very similar question. I think it was Corey Carlson when he referenced this idea of Jesus, in the New Testament, Jesus passes this blind man and he says, tell me what you want. And we all think the blind man's going to say, well, I want to see. But Corey's point is like, well, that's not the question. The question isn't, do you want to see? The question is like, do you want to be well? And that might mean something different. That might mean something unexpected. That might mean something that's a little bit deeper than what meets the eye. And so I love that Brad was pressing into and challenging us all like, hey, I actually want to be well. I want to be well. I don't want to look like I'm well. I don't want to think I'm well. I don't want to feel well. I don't want to appear one thing. I want to actually be well. And so, yeah, man, on that note, I think we celebrate this lounge. This was a big one. There was a lot of great insight into what does it mean to be a leader? I think primarily like how do you lead yourself? And then secondarily, how do you be a leader who engages others thoughtfully, sustainably, and with something more than just like pizza and ping pong?
Yeah, no, that's a pretty good summary, man. Is hey, if I lead self first, then I can lead my team, and then I can see how that affects my business. Holistically speaking. But I think we've come back over and over and over again to the fact that it starts with me. If I want to be a leader, it doesn't start with my team and figuring all that. It starts with me figuring out how do I start to grow in wisdom? How do I start to actually get healthy? Do I want to get healthy versus do I want the perception of people thinking I'm healthy? And can I actually care about people? So, okay, as we're landing this plane and we're coming down, let's do our little practicality corner. I'm going to spring something on you and see what you got because I got to think about this too. All right, so give me anything that you've done as a result of these 3 episodes that you're like, man, really practically, here's something that I think that I've started to implement as a result of some of these conversations.
That's good. Well, definitely something that I've been asking myself is, do I want to be well? Brad, do you want to be well? You have to make choices that align with being well and being whole and being integrated. And then the other thing I would say is catching myself. So that would be a Brad Larson thing. On the Josh Kalsbeek side, catching myself in, I would say like moments of resentment when I actually take a step back, I rationally evaluate, hey, why am I feeling this way? Usually comes down to me telling myself a story that is not verifiably, it's actually rooted in distorted thinking. So because of my distorted thinking, I have a lens on a set of circumstances or experiences in my past, and I ruminate over it. And it prevents me from really engaging in the moment and being present. Maybe that's with a client, with my wife or kids or something, or maybe just even in a moment of privacy, just alone, just when I'm alone,
Yeah.
and with my own thoughts. Which, let's be honest, who wants to be alone with their own thoughts?
Some
Not
people
for very
really like
long.
themselves. They like themselves, Maybe you need to like you more. I heard somebody say once to me, this was in recovery circles, but they said, if I'm in my own head, I'm behind enemy lines.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
It's pretty good.
There's a truth. There's a truth to that. There's a truth to like,
yeah,
you can definitely overdo it, right? Where Like, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to look back at your past and be angry at an injustice that you experienced or something, right? But when that's the overarching perspective that you have about the bad experiences in your life, you've got a bigger problem that you've got to deal with, right? So I think for me, I'm finding more and more that some of those things that I'm bearing resentment over, whether that's in leadership and career stuff or personal stuff, it really deals with, let me reorient my thinking in a more healthy way. Let me try to seek to be well and find that a lot of that starts to resolve itself, and that the anger can dissipate and that life can just move on in a happier, healthier, less, baggage oriented way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Truthfully, we do that because it feels good though, right? I mean, we live on that resentment because resentment feels good. It really does.
Here's the thing. We as leaders have to remember that the internal process that I'm describing about myself is actually pretty average. Mm-hmm. I'm actually not that exceptional in my struggle there. And so as leaders, we have to remember that, like, what happened with my old boss, or maybe what happened with my spouse or my mom or my dad, I project onto you as supervisor, owner, manager, right? Whatever level of authority that you play in my life, I might be projecting some of that onto you. And so as a leader, I have to remember, okay, my people are projecting their experience of authority onto me. How do I help them let go of some of that and evaluate me on my own merit and have a relationship with me on my own merit, not a relationship with the me they think I am because of their past experiences? That's a difficult thing to play, but Jessica helps open the door to that by saying, ask good questions, listen, and devote time, because that's where the delta between who they think I am and who I really am gets closed.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's great, man. And even if they're not ready because they don't realize that they're projecting that on you, having the wherewithal to understand that that might be happening is really important, because then I can step back and kind of divorce that from that person and go, okay, this probably has more to do with the trauma in their life or whatever they're projecting on me than it really does as me. And I don't need to take it personally, right? I can live in that world. So even if your employees have no idea that they're just projecting all of that back onto you, you can have the idea that they're projecting all of that onto you, right? And so even if you're not in a spot in that relationship where you're able to help them see that or ask questions about it yet, you can know that. And I think that that's pretty grounding in itself. So yeah, man, no, they were all super good stuff. I mean, Josh challenged me to, I mean, I've always had a, number of mentors, but that was really helpful as in the process of looking at an executive coach. And that's been super important transition for me, as like, hey, a hero in my story to go look up, to try and be like, to try and be more of that person, to gain wisdom from them and learn from them, has been super helpful. And practically at work, Jessica's really important too. I've been spending a lot more time with coworkers trying to understand what makes them tick. Where do they want to end up? Where do they want to go? Even if they're not directly under me, I've been spending some good time there. So, and Brad's question that was asked to me 8 years ago, in a really hard season in my life, do I want to get well? Do I want to get well? And that will forever stick with me. I think if you could ask yourself any question out there, that's the best place to start. Nothing else really matters unless you say, hey, I do want to get well, right? We could talk about all this stuff with leadership, but if you don't perceive that maybe there's a gap or a problem and you don't want to get well, then I'm not sure why you're listening to our podcast. Because I think both of us would go, yeah, I still want to get well. I am growing in my wellness, and hopefully the longer I live, the better and healthier I'm going to get. That would be the hope.
Yeah.
So
increasingly well.
Yeah, increasingly well. Like we never, right? Never stop becoming. We don't get to arrive. We just got to keep asking ourselves, okay, do I want to be well today? Is that what I want? Do I want the perception of being well, or do I actually want to be well? Like, perception is easy. I can look really well to other people. That's easy to portray that. But on my, inside, the real me, can I be at peace with that?
Skinny fat,
Skinny fat. Yeah. You get the loose t-shirt and you're looking pretty good. But realistically, we're going to get kicked off the air for saying this for sure. Not that we're on the air, but if we were. So no, man, that's a great lounge.
Yeah. What do the listeners do? What do they do?
as a result of this, man.
Yeah,
subscribe, like, join our group coaching.
Sign up for group coaching.
Sign up for Imposters Anonymous. All these places are launch points, I would say, that if you're like, hey, I'm curious about what it would look like to get well, here's a number of opportunities to be able to do that. All that can start by liking, subscribing, following, whatever you do on your particular platform. So it's great, man. With that.
All right, guys, until next time.
Do-do-do. Yep.
Lead better.
That's good. Lead better.